well known, and I want to give over especially Ashikoyer to Moshe and Sidichov for putting everything together. The Stisayam Zol Hoylazan, Gezind Nachas and Achubas Adas and Alanino. I think we're here.
I wanted to share today a sponsor of the Manasu, the Zech Nishmas, Shimon Ben Ritzidoy. The outside is Chof Aloshach.
B'shus, Hashem Rod Asra, Kol Kodesh Hazeh. I just want to offer you Shekhay after Rav Moshe for giving me the opportunity, the zechus, to address an olam that when they have a day off, they want to learn and get and be part of this man. It's there of a Shchodesh, as in Kippur Cotton, and but we prepare ourselves. So, Chanul Purim, I want to discuss a machshava, a chiddush that I heard from Rabbi Avrohom Shlita, with an introduction. It's not just a vitz or a zog that Purim is bigger than Yom Kippur, because the Lashon of Yom Kippur is the day of Kapara means cleansing, raining, it cleans us. The day itself, from Averes and Om Mamokom, if we do tshuva. And it's called not only Yom Kippur, but it's called Yom Kippurim, which, so the Taish that we understand is like a day like Purim. When you compare something to something else, what you compare it to is bigger. You know, you're like someone else. Someone else is cautious. We compare it to someone else. They say Purim is bigger than Yom Kippur. So everyone says, yeah, because Yom Kippur is Tshuva Me'ira. We're fasting. We're dressed in white like Malachim. We're saying Al Chait. We want the Kadosh Baruch Hu to understand that we're Mekabel on ourselves, we're saying Vidui, and Charot, and Mekabel on the Osid, but it's much bigger than Tshuva Me'ahavo. Tshuva Me'ahavo, when we do Tshuva Me'ahavo, the Zidonis becomes the Chuyos. They become a stepping stone to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's a whole hesper in that as well. But what I want to zero in on is, why is Tshuva Me'ahavo bigger than Tshuva Me'ira? Purim is Tshuva Me'ahavo. The Gemara in Shabbos, Tiferes, when it speaks about Kabbalah Satira, so the Gemara tells us, Kof Aleim Har Kegigas. HaKadosh Baruch Hu picked up the mountain over our heads like a gigas, like a barrel. So one pshat, that's a chuppah, something over our head, but not according to the Gemara. The Gemara there says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to us, Im Tekabel Satira Mutov. If you Mekabel the Torah, then good. Then you're living. V'yim lav shom tehek v'raschem. So first of all, the Gemara asks right away. She says, we'll have a taina, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You made us take the Torah. So the Gemara answers, that was good until Purim. Until Purim, we could say we took the Torah out of Yira, we were afraid, the Eibush picked up a mountain over our head. But Purim, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim, we had such an ava for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kimu masha kiblu kvar, after Purim, there's no more excuse that the Eibush forced us. We had ahava. But Tosfos on the spot asked the Kasha, what does it mean, Har Kegigas? HaKadosh Baruch Hu picked up a mountain over our head by Har Sinai. We said, Nasa v'nishma. We just, this past Shabbos, Parshas Mishpatim, we said, Nasa v'nishma. So the Alta of Nevardik, when I was a young boy, so I grew up in a shul called Avos Achim, on the corner of East 2nd Street and Crotelia Road in Kensington. The Rav at that time was of Yaakov Koppel Pasternak, Zechron Levrach. During the war, he spent his war years in Siberia, in the Vardik Yeshiva. That's where he got married. That's where he had his first 2 children. And he would tell us machshavos from the Vardik. So he said, such a machshava that's so powerful. It's so mechazek, Yidden who come on a day off to learn Torah and to hear the chizuk. It's a Mordechai Gedank. He said that the question that Tosfos asked, we just said Nasa v'nishma, He said, Avada. So, Nasa v'nishma is, we said it, we've seen the Esser Makos. We saw the Abish to take nature and turn it inside out. We saw Kriyas Yamsuf. There were so many Nisim, at least 50 Nisim by Kriyas Yamsuf itself. Alayam, Loku, Chamishim, Masayim Makos, Masayim v'Chamishim Makos. We saw so many Nisim that we didn't even say Nasa v'nishma in the beginning. The first thing we said, and it's repeated again in Mishpatim before Nasa v'nishma, is Nasa. Well, Nishma, Shmiya, doesn't just mean to hear. Shmiya means der Herren. I'm going to learn Torah, and we're going to learn a Chiddush today that Mamish I only heard it a few years ago, and it's Mechayim. As time goes on, we hear new Chiddushim on things we're doing our whole life. It's unbelievable. But Nasa is without Nishma. I feel like on Nish der Herren, I'm going to do everything. I saw Pshat like that in Avrohom, in one of the... I have to remember the name of the Sefer on Tefillah, but when we beg HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avrohom is the biggest bakosha it's the only bakosha, really, before Shemoneh Esrei. Everything before Shemoneh Esrei is Psukkah Zimra, is songs, it's praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the Gemara Bracha says, we're knocking on the Eibishter's door. But Avrohom is a bakosha gedolah. We ask, with so many Lashonos of Rachmanis, and we say, Ba'avor v'seinu shabbatchu v'cha, in the zechus of our Zedis who want us to have Torah, and they trust in you. What's this is Latlan Chukei Chaim? Hakadosh Baruch Hu taught them everything. They were brilliant, like a brilliant architect would come into this building and would be able to draw you the blueprint. He would figure out from looking at the building how to draw the blueprint. So the Others were able to look at the world and understand the blueprint for the world was the Torah. They could figure out the Torah by looking at the world. And that's why Avrohom Avinu baked matzahs. And they understood all the mitzvahs. They looked at the world and they figured out the blueprint. So they knew the mishpatim also. Why does it say that you taught them the chukim? So it's so pshat because by the Ovos everything was a chayk. We don't have to understand. It's wonderful. We learn Torah Kedosha. You learn through Shas and we understand. Many says Sefer HaChinuch, even for the chukim, Sefer HaChinuch brings a shorish mitzvah. But when you do a mitzvah, because the Rebbeinu Shalom said so. About it's wonderful to give tzedakah and all the mishpatim of paying for nizikin, but they always did it as a chayk. The Eibishter said so. So we said Nasa, even without Nasa, without Nishma. Then we added Nasa v'Nishma. Because Limud HaTorah, we're going to discuss, it cleanses us, it makes us adin, it makes us a whole different person, it lifts us up, makes us kodesh. But so the Maisa, the Eibishter held the har over our heads because there's going to come a time 2 years after Kabbalas HaTorah. How are we, I saw from Gamliel Rabinovich in the Sefer Tivo Avoida. So he asks, all of us are so inspired, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we mamish do tshuva. And we really mean it, but earnestly. People are crying already by Ne'ilah. We're so cleaned out, we're mamish in tears from Tahara. And then by Chanukah, we turn around, he says, and we say, what happened to me? I'm back where I was before. Well, how about right now? So long past Rosh Hashanah. What happened to all my promises, to all my resolutions that I made on Rosh Hashanah? So he says, because we do tshuva on too many things at one time. If a person would zero in on one thing every year and check every day, am I doing it? Am I doing it? It's hard to check 10 things every day. One thing, and we would do tshuva. We could zero in on it. But we get confused and things go on. So right after Kriyas Yamsuf, mamish after Yetzias Mitzrayim, where the Eibishter said about us in tomorrow's Yoim, David HaMelech brings it down, he quotes the Rabbeinu Shalom. Ani Amarti Elikim Atem, you're mamish malochim, uvnei Elyon kulchem. You're like Adam Rishon Kodem Achef, only 49 days after Yetzias Mitzrayim, Mem Tesharei Tumah became Mem Tesharei Kedusha. We were ready for Shar Hanun. We were ready for Torah Kedosha. And then, however, I tested you like Adam Arishan. I gave you in the sun, and you thought Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come back. Adam like Adam Arishan to Musa, and you brought back Misa to the world to start all over again. I did the same thing. Adam Rishon had a test. He had no internal Yetzer Hara, only a peripheral Yetzer Hara, the Nachash. And the Eibishter tested Adam Rishon with the Nachash, and we failed. So now we were back to the same level of Adam Rishon Kodem Ached. So I gave you a test like Adam Rishon. Maybe you'll pass the test, and it'll be Olam HaTikun. It'll be the perfect world where the Eibishter had a cholam for the world. No, Achein Ka'adam Timusun. So we keep trying. So the Eibishter held the Har Chagigas for that time when it's going to be years past all the Nisim. And so the Eibishter is saying, are you afraid of this Har? Are you afraid of this mountain falling? It's a big pachad, right? The year of the Twin Tower implosion, 2001. So by the Aguda convention, the Aguda dinner in May, in the end of the year, by the Aguda dinner, they showed a film of what was going on in the street by the Twin Towers. And it was Pchodim Leroyim to see it. I said to myself, that was Hakagigis. People were looking up and running because pieces of cement were falling and molten metal was falling. It was mamish a nace in the direction of pain, but it was a nace. Scientifically, in 45 minutes, that shouldn't have happened. So much to be destroyed in 45 minutes. It's come out not shaykh. But in any case, you saw the people looking up and running so the Eibishter asked, you're afraid of the mountain? It's scary to be under a mountain? That's how frightened you should be in the future of not living a life of Torah. Why? Because into Kabbalah is Torah forever, that even way past Matan Torah today in Tavshin Pei Vav, in such a golus that's such Radifas HaGashmius, it's Pila Ploim, what people are doing, it's unbelievable. How much money people need for unnecessary things that become that people think are part of life. They don't become part of life. It's not true, but people think they're part of life. So the Eibishter said, if you Kabbalah Torah forever, Lav Shom, the Alter Nevardik said the diktuk is incorrect. It shouldn't say Shom Tehek for Aschem. It should say Poi Tehek for Aschem. You're going to be buried right here, under the Har. Because the Har was on top of us. No, the Eibishter said, Shom, I don't kill anybody. I have Erech HaPayim. You're not going to die if you're not Makabel the Torah. A person that Chas v'Sholem, goes to a place and goes to the theater, Hashem sees not sneers, Chas v'Sholem, goes to a movie theater. So the Eibishter sends a lightning bolt. Have you learned Talmud Devaira? The whole Perek Aleph is about the Erech HaPayim. The Eibishter sees the person's going and lets his feet go. Sees him watching and lets him continue to see. And the Eibishter Erech HaPayim. The Eibishter said, I'm not dropping them out, not poetic for us, Sham. In that choice of not living Torah, take for us, you're burying yourselves. You're going to live 120 years, it's going to be killing time. Avrohom and David HaMelech, it says, Zekenim bo bayomim, Yishman Zokein bo bayomim, they came with every day under their belt. Every day is accounted for, they lived. But Shom, if you're not Makabel the Torah, take for us, you're burying yourselves, the Alter Nevardik said. Not poi. Hashem doesn't punish. Hashem doesn't send lightning bolts out. Hashem doesn't take away. He could. The verse says, you see by Avrohom and Nevat, he became paralyzed immediately when he wanted to hit the Navi. And then he had to be mispalled, he should be able to move again. So Hashem could do it. But the Eibishter doesn't do it. The Eibishter is saying, Shaman, the choice of not living Torah, of doing what the Torah says not to do, you wasted a day. The secular world is proud of killing time. They have $1 billion industry. Their movie industry is billions of dollars, and they're proud to call it. They don't know what to do with their time. But a Yid has so much to do with their time. So that was the Yira that the Eibishter wanted, but that's not the ideal Yira. What I think Pshat is, when we say that Yom Kippur is only Kippurim, Purim is much bigger. Why is Tshuva Me'ava bigger? Because it's the biggest level of Yira. The Eibishter expects us to live with Yira. Yira starts with Yira Sachet. We learn the Torah, we learn Mishpatim, we see Masyumas, Malchus. There's punishment for Chet. We have to believe it's Dayon. But from that Yira, we start doing the mitzvahs. That's when we're very young. And we learn Chumash on a simple level. once a person starts being behind the mitzvahs, it changes us. And we develop to a yira saroinimus. We begin to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu differently. You know, a bacher called me yesterday. They just gave a big nisyonis, this bacher, very big nisyonis. So he said to me, he's thinking. He learned half a day for a while and has been working. He saved up $20,000. He told me he's thinking of, like, now that he has 20, he's going to take a year off and sleep every day till 5:30 p.m. He needs a rest from such hard work. He's going to get up at 5:30 in the evening, and that's never started his day. I said, well, how do you sleep the next night? You know, you sleep one day, you can sleep till 5:30. But when is the next day? You know, he says, he wants to discuss it with me. I had this, Baruch Hashem, I'm glad that the boys come to discuss. A different bacher had such a hard life, Imamish, you know, where he was such a young bacher. When he became a Yosem, and life was very hard. And he was 18 years old, and he came into me, he says, it's a terrible thing, I think I'm going to go off the derech for a year. For a year. I need a break. It's such hard work, yeshiva, with that, you know. And my life has been very hard. I need a break. So I said, and why a year? Who says you're going to come back? No, because then he said, I'm going to go to the Kosel. And Esha Torah sends down Rabbonim to the Kosel. They're going to bring me back. So Bacha said, he meant it. He was a sweet Bacha. I'm glad he came to talk, you know. I said, and how do you know he's going to come down and get you? So he said, because he does. That's what he does all the time. I said, but we're never sure. You're never sure you're going to make a Teretz Yisrael to the Kosel Moravi either. Maybe it's easy. We should plan how things would be easier. Maybe we should change yeshivas. You know, let's discuss what we can do. Because you know what's happening right now. All these chaloimis of making things easier. Shamtek furaschem. That's the Umas Ha'olam's way. How do we kill time? They don't know what to do with time. A Yid knows what to do with time. So Yiras Ha'oinish brings us to doing the mitzvahs. Doing the mitzvahs makes us a higher level, and we're zoicha to Yiras Ha'oinish. Maybe it's so great. Maybe it's just so great. I realize what he does for me. That we're zoicha to be here today together. The truth is that when I get into my car, Rabbi Finkelman Shlita used to say this, and every day I drive about 2.5 hours a day to and from yeshiva. An hour going, an hour and a half coming home. It's always much busier traffic coming home. Last 25 years I'm going to Kew Gardens Hills from Borough Park every day. But when I get there, I mamish say Hodu Lashem Ki Tov Kidei Olam Chasdai. Like when I come over here, you pass every day a stalled car, an accident. I listen to the traffic report before I leave, because there are 3 ways to go to yeshiva. Which way is most open today? Which way is most open? But Rabbi Miller said, when you pass by that accident, thank the Eibishter, it's not you. It could be you, chas v'shalom. You have to thank the Rabbi Shalom. There's nothing. You develop from the years to Revimus, knowing that the Eibishter runs the whole world. You develop an ahava. You start to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the matanos that the Eibishter gives, for all the matanos. Once you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're by the highest level of yira, and that is, I'm afraid to hurt somebody I love. Like a child that has the right relationship with the parents. Many things they will not do because the parents would be upset. I remember myself, I had wonderful parents, Aleichem Hashalom. And when I was an 8th grader, and the Yitzhahara begins to koch, on your bar mitzvah, and then the Yitzhahara gets harder. And I was in Yeshiva Torah Vodaath of Flatbush, which eventually became Torah Tamima. But it started out as a branch of Yeshiva Torah Vodaath. I was the first 8th grade graduating class in that yeshiva. It was a little building sandwiched in between big apartment buildings on Caton Avenue and Ocean Parkway. The yeshiva had bought a house, and they had all the 8th grades in that house. And there was a big apartment house next door. And there were non-Jewish kids in the apartment house next door. And every now and then they would go to the garbage pails, tons of garbage pails. It was in the back of the apartment building. They'd look for bad reading material, roll it up and push it through the fence for the boys in the yeshiva, the Sionis, in the United States of America. It's a hard gullus. And you have a Yitzhahara, they're giving you what to look at. And I had a Yitzhahara, and I saw what the boys did, but I said to myself, I remember it saved my life. It really did save my whole Yerushalayim. I said, I can't do it, because the Menal is going to find out. Because he finds out everything. The Menal was Rav Lipa Margulis Zechron Livracha. He was the head of the yeshiva from the beginning. It became to Mima ultimately. He became the Rosh Yeshiva. But when I was a young boy, it was the Menal, and he finds out everything. He's going to call my parents. I can't let my parents get that phone call. I can't. They're such good parents. I can't do it to them. And he did find out, and he did call the parents. Baruch Hashem, my parents didn't get a phone call. The highest level of yira, I'm afraid to hurt the one I love. In a marriage, that's how it should be. I tell the Bochrim and Yungalite, I have a Shalom Bayis every Erev Shabbos, half an hour before the end of the Seder on Erev Shabbos. The Bochrim who are in Shidduchim, because you shouldn't learn on the job, you should be prepared what Shalom Bayis is, and the Yungalite, and I tell them the idea that is brought down, the Chazon Ish says, and in the Sefer Simcha Babayis from Reb Zilberstein, his Sefer on Shalom Bayis. So he has Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zichron Livracha's Ha'oros on the Chazon Ish's letter to Chassanim. One of the things is, when you leave the house, you tell your wife where you're going, when you're going to come back, and when you come home, tell her about what happened. It's a tremendous shemira not to do anything you shouldn't do. This closeness that the Chachomim tell us, there should be a certain year. How can I do out of the house a thing that would upset my spouse? On both sides, it should be that way. There's emesa ahavo. There's the highest level of yira. That's Purim. Yom Kippur is tshuva me'yira. Yira serayim not yira serayim also, depending on what level a person's on. But Purim is the highest level of yira because it's from ahavo. Tshuva me'ahavo is really tshuva me'yira. How can I hurt the Rabbeinu Shalom? Have such an ahava for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's many lessons in Purim, but one of the lessons comes from the halacha that Purim is. We celebrate Purim, read the Megillah. We don't. There are reasons. About Shabbos, we don't read it on Shabbos, but Bechlal Purim was made to be like Hanukkah, a weekday Yom Tov. These two Yom Tovim, the Rabbanon, in the 7 mitzvahs, the Rabbanon, were made dafka to be in the weekdays. Why wasn't Purim made to be a regular Yom Tov, like other Yom Tovim? It was such a murdik hatzalah. That's the question that Rabbi Avrohom Shlita asked. So he brings down that we know that Mitzvah Hashem, Ebesh will be Mashiach, Tzidkenu, there'll be Tchias HaMesim, and the Mesim, what are we going to be rebuilt from? From the luz, from the one bone that doesn't decompose in the average person. Tzaddikim never decompose. Tzaddikim, I had a roommate when I was in Yeshiva Tevadas dorm, and his Zayder was a big Munkach Chosid. He today is part of Munkach, this roommate of mine. But at that time, they were sending a delegation to Munkach in Hungary to move the remains of the Michas Elazar, Zichron Livracha, because the government was making a road through the cemetery, and they don't care about Kvarim. They would mow right through the Kvarim. So they sent a delegation to move the remains of the Michas Elazar to a different place in Hungary, in the Beis Hillel. So my roommate Zayda asked him to go. He asked the Yeshiva Rishus, because he felt too old and too weak to go. He wanted to be mechabed. He came from Hungary. He remembered the Michas Elazar. And he wanted to send his grandson. He did. The yeshiva allowed it. He sent his grandson. This roommate of mine came back for a month, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but about a month he had trouble sleeping at night. He had such pachad from having seen the Michas Elazar. He said to me when he came back, he said, not stam, his body didn't decompose. They removed it and moved it. He said the cheeks were not sunken in. They were not dried out. They were full, like it would have been nifta 5 minutes ago, he said. And that was 30 years after the Patira, when I was a Bachar in Yeshiva. 30 years, not a week. 30 years after the Patira. He said he couldn't sleep at night. It was a pachatim to see the reality. Tzaddikim. And we're going to speak about that. That there's so much the goof that the goof doesn't decompose, but the average person, that the body decomposes. So from the luz that we eat malava malka, which is sudas david malka mashicha, The Malav Malka has to do with Tchiyas HaMezim, has to do with Be'ez Hashem, Yemais Mashiach, and on. So by eating Malav Malka, we strengthen that luz from which the body is going to grow again. And the Zohar Kadosh says, where is the luz? It's above the Shedra, Mokem Sheshoyre Kesher Shel Tefillin Shel Rosh. The luz is the place that we put the Kesher, the Tefillin Shel Rosh, the Zohar says. And there's a Tosfos in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says, what is a Pesheya Yisrael Begufay? What is a person who he's irresponsible, he's Pesheya with his body, says the Gemara, Karkafta Deloy Monach Tefillin. A head that doesn't put on tefillin is a person that's Pesheya with his body. Tosfos says, why doesn't he put on tefillin? If he's an Oynes Rachmana Patre. There are people who are not well, they're not gesund, they're in the hospital, they can't put on tefillin. Tosfos says, not for Alts Oynes. The ritzuos of the tefillin are bizoyin to him. He doesn't want to put on tefillin because of the ritzuos. So, what do the ritzuos? Why doesn't it say because tefillin bezuyas alav? Tefillin are bozuy on him. Why the lashon of ritzua? And when this will come to put it all together, what we spoke about in the Hakdama. So to answer this, Rav Shaul brought a sefer Or HaTzvi from the Maggid of Brisk, whose masbir that in the Megillah, the pasuk we say every Motzei Shabbos, like Yudam Hayasa Oyra v'Simcha v'Sasin v'Kar, the Gemara darshans each of these as part of Klal Yisrael's life of Torah. V'Yakar elu tefillin, precious. That's tefillin. The word precious. So there's a big kesher because we received tefillin back like Yehudim when we were zoiche that the Eibishter took off the Haman mask and the Eibishter hung it up on that 50 Amos pole that Haman had set up with the Eibishter. Okay, everything is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's not Haman is just a messenger of Hashem to bring us back to do tshuva. Anything that we go through is a message that we have to do tshuva. Once we did tshuva, the first thing was achdus, leich knesses kol Yehudim. Then b'tzumu alai, fasting, a second kind of tshuva. Shlosh yomim laila v'yoyim. But then it says when it was zeicha that the nes was done, Purim brought us back tefillin. There's a kasher, chazok, between tefillin and Purim. So the Sefer Amudei Or brings down, why weren't we mekabel a real Yom Tov as we started with? Why? So the Amudei Or answers because Yom Tov we don't wear tefillin. Because Yom Tov itself is an ois like Shabbos, and we don't wear tefillin. We don't need that ois of tefillin. And tefillin have a very big shaykhis to Purim. So in order to celebrate Purim, so we have the Yom Tov on a day that's a weekday. So let's discuss that. The base of the head is where the luz is. The head is Gor Choshev. We know Esav. The only part of him that ended up in the Maras Machpelah with his father Yitzchak and his mother Rivka was his head. His body couldn't be there. So Mistama, there's a shaykhis, in this Amalek is from Esav, and Purim is in Mechias Amalek. And yet Esav, who was the picture of Amalek, his head was able to be in the Maras Machpelah. Why? And from that we'll understand the Ritzuos of Tefillin. There's a famous medrash that Mistama everybody here heard. The medrash says, "Hasayif hasefer bo kruchim and hashamayim." The sword and the Torah came intertwined from Shamayim. The Torah was wrapped around the sword. Why? So the Chazal, the medrash continues, "Isayfa lav safra, v'isafra lav sayfa," because the Eibishter wants us to know. If a person is a person of the sword, and it doesn't mean like we're thinking, a duel or a killing. It's not what it means. We'll discuss it. Then he's not a person of the Torah. If he's a person of the Torah, he's not a person of the sword. So what's pshat? So the Sefer Eretz Tzvi explains this. He brings a ma'aseh. The Avnei Nezer, when he was 18 years old, he was an Edom of the Kotzke, and he was a Cholim Sukan. He had a very, very high fever, and he couldn't learn regular limud. He wanted to learn some Torah. So he took a machshava sefer. So the Koska came in to see him, and he said, "What are you learning in this sefer?" The Sefer is teaching you that, like Kehal says, that this world is heaven. And there's nothing, everything we run after is most of it's unnecessary. Most of the things we have in life are unnecessary. I marvel at the real Yiddish. I wasn't raised with real Yiddish. In our house we spoke English. I was zoche to learn Yiddish in yeshiva. We learned our Torah in Yiddish till I was in the 9th grade. Then the yeshiva switched over to English also. Because the Bochum was speaking English at home, and they felt that we'll understand the Torah better in English. But my Edom speaks echte Yiddish. So I noticed when he was looking to children, and he would come to our house for Sudas, they came to us they still do come, Baruch Hashem, now I'm used to it. So he speaks his children in Yiddish. So he never asks them, when we're having a Suda, du willst a Stückel Challah? Du willst a bissel soda? Do you want? No, he says, du darfst. That says, du darfst. In Yiddish is Lashon HaKodesh. The previous two Shkolim Rebbes ago, the one who came from Russia with his father, I don't know all the names, but I went to Malav Malka by him, and he once explained to me, I asked Malav Malka, why he makes such a big issue out of speaking Yiddish. He explained to me that Yiddish was made by the Yidden more than 1,000 years before Churban Europe. The Yidden wanted their own Lashon HaKodesh. They want a holy language, a clean language. The Rambam writes Lashon HaKodesh, the Heilige Torah Lashon, is so heilig. There's no descriptive parts, let's say, of the goof, of the body that are personal parts. We don't talk that way in Lashon HaKodesh. A person will go to the Beis HaKisei and relieve himself of Mei Raglayim. Translate Mei Raglayim in English. Water from the feet. If anybody, chas v'sholem, has water coming out of his feet, he must see a doctor. What's the matter with him? But that's the closest we get in Lashon HaKodesh. It's such an edel Lashon. Such an edel Lashon. I remember once one of the Bochum in Yeshiva, he was one of the last ones in his Chabura to become a Chassan. He still wasn't a Chassan. And he met someone. He said to me, Rebbe, this is mamish what I'm looking for. He's still learning. It's a lot. He's married a number of years already. He wanted to keep on learning. And he was looking for a certain kind of person. He said, and everything is that I want except the language is not fine. She says certain words, not curse words, not chashem like the street goyim, but not edel like a yid speaks. I once complained to Rabbi Belsky, the father of the famous Belsky family, the Shol Belsky's father. He was a Talmud of Radin, of the Chofetz Chaim. He was my father's chavrusa when they were both retired and they learned together. We lived a few doors from each other. So he once asked me, don't you love my yeshiva Torah V'das? That's where he grew up. I said, I love it, but I wish we would still learn in Yiddish. He says to me, you do learn in Yiddish. You're speaking Yiddish right now. I said, I'm speaking Yiddish. Yeah. Your English is Yiddish. You never say a bad word in English. You don't speak like the Goyim. Your English is you ever say a bad word? No. I said, no. I said, I was very proud of my youngest one time, came home from preschool, school bus. I was so excited when this happened. He said to me, Tati, a kind of the bus, who was 5 years old, a child on the bus said, Misa Werte. He said, ugly words, bad words. He was very distressed. Children are young, are pure, they're not exposed to the garbage, they're pure. So I said, Misa Werte, I have to call him Manal. But if I'm going to call him, I have to know what he said. I feel terrible to me, should tell me, but I have to know because I'm going to complain. So he had to tell me what he said. There was that one Yingler that told the other Yingler that he's crazy. Because certain words we don't use. I remember Rav Pam gave us a shmuz on Nekiyas HaPeh. What's the time limit?
10:40.
We're off the whole day. No time on it.
So the Nekiyas HaPeh. So Rav Pam, I was in yeshiva, he was Rebbe already over 40 years. He leaned over the stender and he said to us, it's the first time since I'm in yeshiva that I heard a bacher say Nivel Peh. In our Heilige Yeshiva Torah V'das. Could you believe it? In our Heilige Yeshiva. He said, he was leaning on the stand, I thought it was Chashman going to faint. He said, I can't, he spoke Yiddish to us, but he said this, he said, I can't repeat the word that the bacher said, I'm going to spell it for you. I got nervous. Because my parents wouldn't let me spell a word that wasn't good. She was going to spell a word. So he says, I heard the Bacher in our Heilige Yeshiva, and he held onto the stender. He said, S-H-U-T-U-P. And when he got to the last letter P, he almost fainted understanding. In our Heilige Yeshiva, a Bocha says such a thing. I hope I'll never hear such a thing again. So Rabbi Belsky was telling me, your English is Yiddish, but the Skolana, Zechron Levrach, told me, that's why we're so makbid. We're different people. We're a higher level people. So the Kotzker told his Eidim, you learn from this Sefer that the other Mazeh is Hevel. But your goof is still going to want the Hevel. That's what the Eibishter made the goof. What's going to be mezachach your goof to understand? You don't need the Hevel, a blat Gemara. A blat Gemara is ma'al the goof. When I heard this, I realized that's why Nemali Melech is signed the Sefer Cotton and signed the Hanhagas Adam. He mentions the first thing in Hanhagas Adam is a person must learn Gemara Rashi Tosfos. It's the first thing he writes. I said to myself, that's the first thing, he doesn't write anything else about Kedusha. The first thing he writes is that Yid should learn Gemara Rashi Tosfos. So when I heard this Maaseh, I said, oh, that's Pshat. So he says that's going to have an effect on the Guf. He says, the Moyach intellectually could know the whole world is nothing. But Torah is what's Mezachich the Guf. It's not enough intellectually to know. Because we see it and we do know. And we know that we're doing certain things that aren't healthy for us, that people do them anyhow. So, but the Torah is mezachich the guf itself. It makes the guf bigger. So the Avnei Nezer explains, what is misasayif? He says, misasayif, Rahman al-Islam, is they separate the head from the body, Rahman al-Islam. Separate the head from the body. So that's what some people are. That's what Esav was. His head intellectually grew up in Yitzchak Avinu's house, and he saw his mother and his father, Tzaddik and Tzidkonis, and he understood what's right, but he gave into his body. The Heilige Chassam Sofer gives a mnemonic device to remember this with. He says that the neshama, the breath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is in the moyach, in the brain, mem. The ruach, that part of spirituality, emotions, fear and happiness and love, that's in the leiv, lamid. And the nefesh, which is the most physical of spirituality, is still spiritual. I'm tired, I'm hungry. It's not tangible. It's tired, hungry, but it's the closest thing to physical. It's in the liver, because it cleanses the blood. And when the blood is clean, you can feel tired and hungry. Chas v'sholem, a person that has a b'tayr shechmal Islam, I once had it, so I'm telling you, there's no such thing as tired, no such thing as hungry. It takes over the body, and when the blood's not clean, and you're itching from head to toe, and it's not shaykh, and you collapse to sleep. But a healthy body, the nefesh is in the kovid, in the liver, chof. A healthy person, that the moyach controls the emotions and the body. The moyach tells us what to do, has the order of things, mem, lamid, chof, melech. He's a king. He's makabel malchus shamayim. So he's a king over himself. If a person lets the body rule him, intellectually he knows what's right. And everybody's thinking. But since he lets the body rule him, his thoughts are, how do I get away with this? No one should catch me. My wife shouldn't know. This one shouldn't know. My boss shouldn't know. And so he's chof lamed mem, kolen, kalima. It's an embarrassment. So sayuf is a symbol of separating the head from the body. That the head knows everything, but the body does what it wants. So says the Chazal, is sayuf, if a person has his head separate, then lav safra, he's not a person that's involved in Torah. He may go to a shir, he may listen, but Esek HaTorah, wanting to understand the Torah, involving ourselves in Torah, it makes the head and the body attached. Isafra, if a person is involved in Torah, he wants to understand what he's learning, he wants to know the Torah, then lav saifa, that he doesn't have his head detached. He doesn't have his head detached. So the B'misa, Esav's head only went to the Ma'aseh Machpelah. But a good Yid, his head controls the whole guf. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the last midrashim in Torah, in V'zos HaBrocha, I really cried the first time I read it because it was so touching. Mordechai Medrash, the Eibishter sends the Malach HaMavis to get the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's 120 years old. And the neshama says to the Malach, I don't want to go. It's so geschmack here. Normally the neshama wants to stay in Shamayim. We wake up in the morning, every one of us. One of the kavanos in Baruch Hashem Echayim Hamesim. You woke me up this morning, because I don't know where I was when I'm asleep. Baruch Hashem, I woke up. Echayim Hamesim is waking up in the morning. It's one of the pshatim in the bracha. So we say, Moedani lefanecha, Melech Chai Kayom. Shechzar tebinish masi bechemla. You gave me back my neshama with compassion, because I bet my neshama didn't want to come back. I bet it was arguing in Shemayim. It's better up here. It's much better up here. Please. You know? And he has this Nisayan, that Nisayan. He gives in here, gives in there. Let me stay here. No. Go back. Oh, Rabbi Amunasecho, how much is your trust in me? You trust me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You give me another day. You're going to be a good boy. You give me the neshama back another day. Rabbi Amunasecho, how big is your trust in me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So by Moshe Rabbeinu, the neshama wanted to stay in him. The neshama, that's the medrash. No, I like it here. So my always goes back to the Jerusalem. Some doesn't want to come. He says Malach Bechoyel, Malach Gavriel. It describes the Malach and the Eibush sends every Malach. The neshama says, but I like it here. It's so geschmack in Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't have sayof. He had safra. His head and body were one. He had that black gemara that the Kotzker spoke about. Finally, the Eibishter came himself, and that's what Neshika is. It describes, the Eibishter came and said, Neshamala, I sent you here for 120 years. You have to come back now. And the Eibishter was Vayipach Nishmas Chayim. The Eibishter took back the breath from Moshe. That was Mises Neshika. And the Neshama came back. And our aspirations to do our best. As Rabbi Yankov said, Pshat in the halachas of Chalav Yisrael. He said, why do we compare ourselves to Moshe Rabbeinu the same way he wouldn't be yonik from a goyish woman until they brought Yocheved? So we should also aspire to be like Moshe Rabbeinu, and we should only drink. It's a kula if you can't get something in Chalav Yisrael, so you can get Chalav Stam, or if it's too expensive, there are kula. Moshe has 40 pages. 2 20-page truvas on Chalav Stam. But otherwise, so Rabbi Yankov said, why would the Pirushim on the Halacha expect us to be like Moshe Rabbeinu? It says before in the Torah, there was never anybody like Moshe. So Rabbi Yankov says, but if you aspire to be like Moshe Rabbeinu, you'll be something. If you aspire, you have to aspire. So let's go back to Tefillin Shel Rosh, and we'll understand that, and we'll close with the bracha. Be'ez Hashem. To me, it was such a chiddush. I never knew it before. But let's go back to Tefillin Shel Rosh. Rav Shor said then that the Gemara says Kakafta L'Lamarach Tefillin, and Tosfos teaches it because the Ritzuis are bezuyos olav. When we put on Tefillin every morning, we just said it, but we're just coming after Shachris. Shaneshama shebemoichi, the neshama that's here in my brain. Nefesh HaChaim, if you learn Nefesh HaChaim, Shar Aleph on Tzelem Elikim, he writes that even the brain is too gashmi for the neshama, the breath of Hashem. He writes it hovers over the brain with a link to the brain. It has a whole arichas on it, but that it is the neshama, and it's always hovering over our brain. Or according to the other Sidichov says it's in the brain. So we say that in the Yishem Yichud. Sheneshama shebemoichi im shalchu shebechaz kulam yim shubon l'avod yisbarach shmai. I want them all to be meshubah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabbeinu Shalom. So where's the kesher between my moyach and my guf? The Ritzuos. We have the Arba Parshiyos in the Tefillin Shel Rosh, and we have Ritzuos tied by the luz, and they go down to the guf, and it brings the moyach to the guf. It's a kesher. So Tosfos is medayik. He says there's not stam tefillin bezuyos love. Why doesn't he wear tefillin? Because he doesn't understand to take care of his guf. The Ritzuos, the message of the Ritzuos is bezuyos love. He doesn't want to be controlled. He wants to do the wrong thing. I said this to the brother who wanted to go off the derech. I said to him, I really understand. I understand your life was so hard since the age of 7. I told him. I said, but it's a day lost. It's sham take for raschem. You're killing time. Yidden don't kill time. We make time alive. We use the time. Baba Yomim. We want to go every day with a day under our belt. Today I lived. When you say Kriya Shema Lamito, and make a cheshbon nefesh. But the one who recently called me about using his money to take a year off, sleep till 5:30. I said, do you think it's what the Rebbe Shalom wants? I told him also, let's discuss making your day earlier. And I told him to cut down work maybe, use your savings to work less. And you daven the Geshmak Shachris and learn something, and you want to go back to sleep for 3 hours, even. 3 hours work less. You want to make life easier, but to leave days without a Shachris sleep till 5:30 is Lashon. You know, you're losing life itself. It's Shom Teik Furaschem. So that's why we Purim, Yom Kippur, we don't wear tefillin. Yom Kippur, we're like Malachim. Our whole body is Rosh. Our whole body is intellect. Our whole body understands. Al Chet. Our whole body understands. But Purim is, even though my Rebbe really for a month before Purim started speaking against it. I spoke for the Bochum in our Beis Medrash the last Motzei Shabbat, explained to them. When I was young, so my Rebbe himself, by the Purim Suda, he was in between his toilets, he would drink a l'chaim of brandy, and he would say, humorously, it was Purim, he was saying, this is to Esav, brandy. He said, you drink brandy, he make a joke. But as we got older, and he saw that there were shikurim that didn't have derech eretz, that weren't adin in their shikras. My last Sheva Brachas was in my Rebbe's house, or Wolfson's house. He made it by the Purim Suda in his house, my last Sheva Brachas. And they were shikurim, but they were so refined. And when they started less refined, he started speaking to us weeks before Purim. Chayiv Osman Simid B'Puri, get drunk with the Purim. Be so excited about Purim. But a drunk is only allowed, a person allowed to get shikr if he's b'chovadik when he's shikr, if he's a kiddush Hashem when he's shikr. You know, I speak about it in my shiur all the time about going to weddings. Don't go to that bar. If you can't dance for your chaver without drinking, don't come. If you're not happy enough for your chaver to dance just because he's getting married, do not come. So I came to a chasna one time. I had 3 weddings that night from Talmidim. So I went to the chuppah by one, first dance, second dance. I come to the first dance, and I had a guest with me from Baal Tshuva from Germany. So I took him with me to see the Yiddish Chassanis. I'm walking in the Continental, in the Chassidish in Williamsburg, and I'm just walking in the door, and a Baal Bus comes running at me, so upset. Your chevra are drunk, it's a chilul Hashem. I said, none of my Talmidim are drunk. I talk about it, they don't drink. I don't think so. This bacher went to 3 yeshivas, one of them is ours. I said, let's call over the shikurim and let's ask them if they're from my yeshiva. I don't want to say what yeshiva they're from, because it was a Lashon Hara. But if they're from my yeshiva, if they're from the Avrohom, Baruch Hashem, not one. And then I said to them, and look, this is a Hasidic hall, they don't have bars. I said, I don't see a bottle of liquor except on the head table for l'chaim. So he took me over to the Baruch's table, picked up the tablecloth, the most expensive, strong, bourbons. And they brought their own. It's not a Kiddush Hashem. Mary would speak about it. He said, drink a little bit more than you used to. Go to sleep, ad yoda. Unless you could be dignified. So if you're a shikr, that kosi bekisi bekasoi comes out wonderful things, so that's okay. But that's Purim. It's different than Yom Kippur. So on Purim we need tefillin in the morning before we get near a bottle. When we daven Shachris, that's why Purim is on a weekday. So we're wearing the Ritzuas. The Ritzuas remind us every day, Hanashem Shabbat in Gufi. It goes together. And then we're a different person. And that's one of the limudim of Purim that I didn't think of until years ago when I heard the news. But now I think of it, and I think of it daily, Be'ez Hashem. So halavai, we should be zoicha. And the zechus that the oilam is here on the day off. It's such a big zechus, Baruch Hashem. And the zechus of Baruch Hashem, that such a choshev arov. We all need a Rebbe. Without a Rebbe, my Rebbe, was nifter almost 2 years ago. This year, Sivan will be 2 years. So the first year was nifter. I was in camp. I came in from camp, but I was still in camp when the new Rav, when the angel took over. So I get a call from, just to explain to you how I believe it, that we need everyone needs a Rebbe. So I got a call from a person my age, from the Kehal, in camp, where I was. When you come back from camp, where are you going to daven? I said, in our shul. I'm there since I started the shul. But even though the Rav is 20 years younger than you, I said, what's the difference? If I mean it, Hashem of Moshe Avdoi. If you believe in the Eibush Shluchim, our Rebbe said, this is the Rav. He's the Rav. Yes, 20 years younger. You're going to ask him your shaylas? I said, yes. What's the difference? The Rebbe said, this is the one who's taking his place. You have to ask him the shaylas. I saw my Rebbe ask younger people shaylas. My Rebbe was half a year shy of 100 when he was nifter. He didn't have a Rebbe older than him that was alive. And he told me, he asked shaylas. I'll just share one with you because you have to end. But my Rebbe loved staying in the old city. We gave him Purim Matana every year. We put money together and we gave him round-trip tickets for him and his Rebbe's Ne'aleim HaSholem to Eretz Yisrael and rent for an apartment in the old city. And that way, we always had children and grandchildren in the old city learning in yeshivas. They would come and daven by the Kosel with the Rebbe every day and Shabbos. And from America, people would fly there to go spend Shabbos with him. It was very geschmack. And the Tiferes had off for a full summer, so he was able to be there for every summer. One summer, after the Intifada was getting strong, the Bochrim called, a delegation called the Meshgiach, could the Rebbe not stay in the old city? Rosen told me this personally. Could he please stay in Geula? Because we used to walk to daven with the Rebbe through Shar Shechem, where everybody was tzanua, everybody was dressed tznius. But now that they're knifing people in Shar Shechem, Rahman al-Islam, so we can't walk through there anymore. We can't go through Shar Yafo. There's so much pretzos in Shar Yafo. So we're not going to come on Shabbos. So could the Rebbe stay in Geula? So Rosen said to me, I have so many connections in the old city. Kriyish Mal Hamita, by the ruins of the original shul, which is no more ruins, they built it up. But the ruins of the original shul, and the Shulchan the Kehal went to different tefillah. I really don't want to be in Geula. If I'm not sure, I want to be next to the Kosel, right down the steps and we're down by the Kosel. But he said, what did I do? I went to his Krei Rebbe, younger than himself. His name was Rebbe Stark. I asked him the Shiloh, what am I supposed to do? And the Rebbe said, Talmidim need you, you go to Geula. And he went to Geula every time after that. To be there, because that's part of having a Baruch Shem Zoicha. You have a Rav, Baruch Shem, that's how we live. That's how he lives, because we have negius. Even we have a geschmack intellect, but sometimes the guf tries to take over. So we have to be able to ask shilas. So in the zechus of the one that came here and wants the kesher with the ritzuos, we're karkafto the monach tefillin, every one of us. We're having breakfast after the tefillin, Be'ez Hashem. So we should be zoicha mitzvah Hashem, that to our personal geula, we shouldn't have to wait for Nissen, Nissen Nigalu, Nissen Nigalu Higoel. No, we should be achishena, that we should all be zoicha to learn the Megillah instead of on Yudalit, on Tesvav this year. And there's a chus of such Yidden who have such a kesher with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah, and Mitzvah Hashem Yerushalayim HaKodesh Yeshukayah.
So this is the explanation.